Hey Zion, Thomas here. For this week's update, I wanted to follow up on the update I gave a couple weeks ago when I said that the government had opened up the door for us as a church to resume gathering with a variety of restrictions. And I had said that us as church leadership, that we would be talking and figuring this out, discerning how we think we want to move forward. And I invited you to join in praying with us in this journey. And today I'm able to give a bit of a report. Our church staff has been working hard on this over the past couple weeks. And last night our ministry council gathered, and we now have, at least for the short term, we have a plan for moving forward. Now, before I get into what we're wanting to do, just want to spend a little bit explaining what the government has allowed, what are the different restrictions, and how that's helped inform our decision. So the government has allowed, or at least opened up the door for churches to resume gathering. And the biggest restriction that they have is the number of people. So it's either 50 people or less, or 1/3 of your normal congregation size, whatever is smaller. So in our situation, the door is open for gatherings of 50 people. But then there's a whole variety of restrictions on that, and they say very plainly in the document that though the door is open, they still strongly recommend churches not to gather in their sanctuary in a normal setting, and to resume live stream or drive-ins, whatever they've been doing over these past couple months. There's guidelines about the personal protective equipment, recommendation for everyone to wear masks, for staff and volunteers to wear masks and gloves, to have hand sanitizer throughout the building, things that are not particularly easy to get right now. The sanctuary, large parts of the sanctuary would have to be roped and blocked off to ensure that no one's sitting together or too close to each other. Big parts of the building have to be blocked off. Separate entrance and exits, volunteers controlling the flow. Kids would have to be close with their families. In fact, anyone under the age of 2 would have to be held by a parent. There's a laundry list of restrictions, and it makes it difficult. And some of the obstacles are things that I've said, like getting enough personal protective equipment. There's anyone over the age of 65 or anyone that's considered vulnerable is strongly encouraged not to attend. In our context, we would have to have 3 services actually to be able to get everyone in on a single Sunday morning. And so that's 3 services back to back to back with the same music team, the same preacher, the same service leader, the same projection and sound tech, just so we're not using the same stuff. It's becoming pretty big, pretty difficult. And for our context, for our church, how we do things, one of the hardest things is no singing. Singing is such an important part of our church. It was the thing that when Julianne and I came for our candidating weekend, we're just in awe of the boisterous singing reverberating off of the walls. Singing, and we had a choir in our church for decades. Singing is an important thing for us. And with the current restrictions, there can be no congregational singing. There can be one singer on the platform, but they'd have to have plexiglass or wear a mask or both for us to be able to do it. Congregation could hum, but no singing, and it might not be totally easy for us to hum and not sing. So the door's been opened. The obstacles are great. And we find, as we've talked over the past couple weeks, we find ourselves in a tension in a variety of ways. One tension, we find ourselves in tension of a couple different passages of Scripture. As we're navigating this, we think of Hebrews chapter 10, where the writer says in the beginning of verse 24, "And let us watch out for one another to provoke love and good works, not neglecting to gather together as some are in the habit of doing, but encouraging each other, and all the more as you see the day approaching." So there the church is commanded to say, we do not neglect gathering. And so we're holding that. Here, we've been neglecting gathering, and it's been out of this pandemic, out of trying to love each other and love our community. But we have this, this the desire that gathering is such an essential part of what we do, and we have that. But then we also have what Paul writes in Romans chapter 13, where it says, "Let everyone submit to the governing authorities, since there is no authority except from God, and the authorities that exist are instituted by God. And so one of the great tensions that we face is this needing to gather. The church, there's no real such thing as an online church. I see those signs throughout the city and I get angry because that's not church. What we're doing isn't church. It's a sad, poor substitute for the regular physical gathering, but as the best that we can do right now. But we don't want to forget what that we actually gather. Like that's what we do. So we have that tension, but then we also have trying. We need to submit to the governing authorities, and so in these tensions, this is where we need wisdom. And this has been our prayer as church leadership, and I know you've been praying for a while, is that we would have wisdom from God to know how to move forward, what to do. And there's also the fact here that none of us are experts. We to pretend that we really understand virology and how pandemics work and what truly is safe practices, as much as we've read articles or listened to podcasts, we still don't know. And so because of that, because of this tension and the guidelines, where we've landed is we don't feel like we're ready to resume our services. We're going to start working towards that. We're going to start trying to get the stuff that we'll need to get the facility ready for that, because we expect these guidelines to be in place for a long time. But we're not ready to gather on a Sunday morning. So it's sad news. We're not quite right what we anticipate in the next few months, maybe even come September, that the door might be open to have 2 services where we can get everyone in. But we're still wanting to work towards that. But we also don't want to stay where we have been. Where we have been has been online meetings only, and stopped all physical gatherings in the midweek. The government has made a lot of movement in that area as well, particularly in terms of outdoor gatherings. And so what we want to do as a church is we want to open the door for us to start meeting and having some sort of gatherings or get-togethers during the week. And so what you're going to see next week especially, we're going to be producing and releasing just some guidelines for here's how midweek gatherings can work for us. And a couple of the highlights are, definitely outside, that we're able to gather in people's yards. We have the Yard Games event coming up this Saturday that we're really looking forward to. We have baseball stuff happening. We can do some stuff outside, following the different guidelines, 6 feet apart, bringing your own food, staying together, those sort of things. We want to open up the door for that. And we're going to start working as a church staff for guidelines on how our church facility, how community groups and young adults and youth, that they could use this space, 1 group a night, following all sorts of different cleaning guidelines, but how they could start using this space to meet if outside does not work for them. And so this is where we're trying to move. We're trying to, we talk about this all the time with Plan to Protect, the idea that there's good, there's better, and there's best. As much as possible in this, we're trying to follow the best. We're trying to have the best policies that we can. We're trying to be safe, proactive, because the last thing any of us want is for us to be the next church in the news as a COVID hotspot. There's been lots of stories over the last couple of months of how this virus has just ripped through churches. I was heard of one last night of a church in Germany that followed all of the guidelines and they had singing, and then there was an outbreak that just tore through that church. We don't want to have that happen here. And so again, this tension that we have. And so we're wanting to open up the door. There's going to be some things coming out. We'll get those out to you. I expect for next Thursday, we'll have some of those things ready. You ministry leaders, look to hear from me probably today or tomorrow with some guidelines. So kind of a good news, bad news update today. The bad news being that we're not ready to meet on a Sunday morning, and we're going to continue to live in this angst, in this tension of not being able to be together. But the good news being that we're going to be able to start seeing each other a little bit more, I hope, here in the future. But also know that these midweek gatherings that we're looking to open up, we're opening it up. We're not pushing this. We're not even really encouraging these. If you are not comfortable in this in your own conscience, you have the complete support of your church family. We completely understand. We're happy to accommodate, and we might have some hybrid meetings where some people are physically present and others are still using Google Meet or Zoom or Jitsi to participate in the meeting. But we're getting closer. This is the first step in our relaunch. And we'll continue to follow and to submit to the AHS guidelines as long as we can. And right now we feel very comfortable with where we're at. And so that's where we're at now. As we navigate this journey, we also want to bring you into the fold. So if you have ideas, if you have suggestions, if you've learned little tips and tidbits of how to do a gathering out of your backyard, let us know. We want to hear from you. We want to learn together, and we want to, the Spirit is moving in all of us, and we don't want to block the Spirit off in any way. So if you're sitting on something and feel like, hey, I have angst about this. I need to make sure that they hear this. Give me a call. Float me an email. I would love to touch base with you on that. So in short, Zion, no Sundays, but we're looking to find some ways to gather during the week. And just a reminder about the event on Saturday, the field games. Hope I'll see you out there. Looking forward to playing some bocce ball or whatever else this weekend. So God bless. Look for me next week, and we'll hopefully have some more information about midweek gatherings and what that's going to look like. So see ya.